Kira will definitely not make it through Blue Lock Side B, and here's exactly why. If you guys like this type of content, please remember that like and subscribe. Without further ado, guys, let's get right into this video. Just like a lot of my videos, you guys are probably wondering, what is Extendo even talking about? It's always some new bad take with this guy. But hear me out, let me cook. You guys know that if you've been watching this channel for a while, or even just been paying the slightest bit of attention to Blue Lock, you know that Isagi and Nagi have been paralleling each other throughout this entire story. They've quite literally been going back and forth with these parallels. In any point in the story, you can look back and you can see clearly a parallel, or Isagi and Nagi just being polar opposites of each other in any point of the story. Now, where I'm going to lead into this is I want to talk more about Kira. In the first time we see Kira, we can see clearly that he's hell-bent on proving Ego's ideology wrong, and he still is. He doesn't like Blue Lock. He's just trying to prove Ego's ideology wrong and destroy Blue Lock from within. But I think something visual that Kaneshiro did in this recent chapter to kind of prove to you that Kira really hasn't developed or grown from his loss against Isagi, growing after losing being a major theme in Blue Lock, and Kira hasn't grown at all from his loss against Isagi, because you can see in this panel when Kira is talking about destroying Blue Lock, there is no ego emanating off of Kira. Now, that could just be an artistic choice, but if you want to read more into it, I think that Kaneshiro did this on purposely to show that Kira definitely has not grown and hasn't chosen to accept Ego's ideology. Now, this could go either two ways. You could see how Kira is right now partners with Nagi in the side B, just like how he was kind of partners with Isagi in the first couple of chapters in Blue Lock. But I feel like Nagi, being someone who just gained his ego and drive to do better, can kind of help Kira to do better himself. In a lot of ways, one could say that Nagi and Kira have always looked pretty similar. In fact, I think in some panels, Nagi and Kira look so similar to the point where I'm not even sure who's who sometimes. And having them both on the same panel sometimes is gonna be confusing unless Kaneshiro draws them both completely differently. But what I'm trying to say here is, we can see the parallels between Kira and Nagi's character as well as Isagi, because when you look at them two, they both have white hair, and they were both geniuses / prodigies from the start. Kira was known as the jewel of Japanese football, and he was literally a star almost from a very young age. Kind of like Nagi, but Nagi ended up discovering his passion for football a little later than Kira did, but he was always a genius. Now, what's one thing that defines these two characters? I think one thing that turns out with both these guys' fate and how they end up in the story is their environment that they grew up on. Now, if you look at Kira's environment, he says in the first chapter that he's friends with some of the people on the U20 Japan national teams and stuff like that, and that, you know, he preaches teamwork and all these other ideals that were basically forced onto him because of Japanese football's just structure back in the day. That's how it was. Those were the principles that were drilled into you. But the principles that Ego is trying to oppose right now is something that Nagi grew up with. So you can see how both these characters, while being so similar, also due to their environment, have also grown so far away from each other, in sense almost becoming polar opposites of the same person. I can go further with this, exemplifying how Nagi dealt with his loss in Blue Lock and ending up gaining his ego to end up destroying Blue Lock to become the best, versus Kira, who is basically just doing it out of pettiness because he got defeated and he wasn't able to accept the ideals. Now, of course, it's not at its core that, but you can also see the two differences in the characters like that. Nagi is acting of his own accord to try and become the best. The main goal isn't to really destroy Blue Lock, because he's still messing with a lot of people there, but he needs to do this in order to become the best, like how he wants to be the best. But with Kira, it's just him trying to end up tearing it down, because let's be honest, guys, if Kira ended up actually succeeding in Blue Lock and then getting kicked out later, I doubt Kira will be trying to take Blue Lock down just like he is right now. It's just the fact that he isn't able to accept the ideals that Blue Lock forces upon its players, because the ideals that he was taught since he was legit go directly opposite to that. So he's obviously trying to oppose them on that level. But what I say from this is, I think throughout this little side B mini arc, we're going to get to see Kira and Nagi, two characters who I've already said are so similar but yet so different depending on the environment they grew up in, interact, and kind of learn their feel for each other. learn how Kira thinks. Nagi will learn how Kira thinks about Blue Lock and all these people, and Kira will learn about how Nagi thinks. And given how they're so similar, I think both of them could be able to change each other's perspective at least just a little bit. I feel like this change will spark a little bit of change throughout Kira in this arc, where we're gonna get to see how Kira actually might be able to gain an ego, similar to how Nagi, through defeat, was able to gain his own ego. So I feel like Nagi will be able to help Kira throughout this arc gain his own ego and actually become more of a formidable player, and hence kind of accepting Blue Lock's ideology to end up trying to take it down. Just like how Isagi was a pivotal figure into shaping the way Nagi is right now, I feel like Kira will also be someone who influences him as well throughout side B and kind of challenges his own ideals and beliefs in that way. They'll both be challenging each other throughout the entire thing. Now, where am I going with Kira eventually gaining an ego? Now, at that point, it's probably pretty obvious that Kira will be the one to go through, but I think Kaneshiro is going to go back to the original parallel at this point, where it's a parallel between Nagi and Isagi and not between Kira and Isagi. I feel like Nagi will be the guy to fully embrace the ideals that Isagi embraced towards the first chapter of Blue Lock and end up kicking Kira out. Now, I don't know how these turns of events really happen. I can't be so detailed with you because it is just all prediction theory, but I feel like throughout this arc, Nagi is kind of going to learn and adapt to how it feels to be Isagi, you know, since he's been in that environment the entire time, and now he's finally starting to embrace Blue Lock's ideals and stuff like that. I really do feel like Nagi is going to be the one to kick out Kira once Kira becomes the best in that room. I feel like Kira will be the one who maybe gets second best with Nagi's help, and Nagi's just like, you know what, maybe they play a similar game to how Isagi played in the first chapter, like tag, and Nagi takes it upon himself to go after the best and ends up kicking Kira out. And I feel like what backs up my theory is the fact that I think 2 people make it through side B. And I just don't think that Kaneshiro will introduce a character like Shindo just to kick Kira out, just to keep Kira. I just don't think that's the case. I feel like Kira is a character that is specifically in this arc, specifically interacting with these characters, because Kaneshiro wants to draw another parallel with Nagi, the actual MC of a whole nother manga, right? I feel like Nagi having this mini arc throughout Kira's mini arc will be a crazy crescendo and shows his true involvement and development throughout the entire thing, along with Shindo potentially becoming Nagi's Bachara. You never know. Nagi never really had a Bachara like Isagi did to push his ego. He just had Ryo. You know, he really just had Ryo. And let's be honest, Ryo is nothing compared to Bachara when it comes to being a hype man. Well, maybe kind of, but still, I feel like Shindo is going to be the one to completely transform Nagi, and they're going to become a deadly duo, the 2 people being able to advance from the side B. Now, of course, at its core, this entire video has just been a prediction / theory, but I thought I want to hear what you guys had to think about this theory. Let me know down below in the comments, interact, share with your friends what you think about this video. What do you guys think about this theory? How do you think this would play out? How do you think the way the story is going to go going forward? I'd like to hear all of it. I read all your comments. Anyways, if you guys like this type of content, please remember that like and subscribe. It really helps me out a lot. I hope you guys all have a great day. Goodbye.